guys, it's me, Nicola very much here. Welcome to my channel. Welcome back to my channel, whichever the case may be. Today we are working with The Emperor Wears No Clothes. We are on chapter 2. And I decided, I had somebody ask me if I had any hacks or anything for cannabis when I'm buying or whatever. And I said, well, other than the points, kinda. When my husband and I smoke flowers, sometimes we like to do these pre-rolls. And I buy one a week, maybe? Yeah, about one a week of them, and it's an 8-pack of these pre-rolls. And each pre-roll is 1 gram. See, I'm going with that. So you have 8 grams. So it is $23.52 for 8 grams of weed. So it's been a little tight, and that's what we've been doing recently. And it works well. Most of the cones are very well. We can take it out and, put it in a bong or whatever that we're trying to do, and it works great. Why do I always do this when the air conditioner turned on? I could have done it, a minute before now. Wouldn't have the air conditioning on. Get in there. Also, we are going to be doing this book, or doing our little book club 3 nights a week instead of only 1, because if we don't, we're never going to get through this book. And there's a lot of information to get to. Right in here, got it. Yep, I got it. Alrighty, so a brief summary of the uses of hemp. Our challenge to the world is to try to prove us wrong. If all fossil fuels and their derivatives, as well as trees for paper and construction, were banned in order to save the planet, reverse the greenhouse effect, and stop deforestation, then there is only one known annually renewable natural resource that is capable of providing the overall majority of the world's paper, textiles, meaning of all the world's transportation, industrial, and home energy needs, simultaneously reducing pollution, rebuilding the soil, and cleaning the atmosphere all at the same time. And that substance, cannabis, is the same one that did it all once before. Cannabis, hemp, marijuana. 90% of all ship sales since before the Phoenicians, from at least the 5th century BC until long after the invention of a commercialization of steamships, mid to late 19th century, were made from hemp. And then there's some pictures in here. The word cannabis is the Dutch pronunciation twice removed from French and Latin of the Greek word cannabis with a K. Of all the rigging, anchor ribs, cargo nets, fishing nets, flags, shrouds, and oakum, the main protection for the ships against saltwater use this as a sealant between the outer and the inner hull of ships, were made from the stalk of the marijuana plant. Even the sailors' clothing, right down to the stitching in seamen's rope soled and sometimes canvas shoes, was crafted from cannabis. Additionally, the ship's charts, maps, logs, and Bibles were also made from paper containing hemp fiber. From the time of Columbus, the 15th century, until the early 1900s, in the Western European America world, and by the Chinese from the 1st century AD on hemp paper lasted 50 to 100 times longer than most preparations of papyrus, I'm not sure, and was 100 times easier and cheaper to make. Incredibly, it costs more for a ship's hempen sails, ropes, etc. than it did to build it with the wooden parts. Until the 1880s in America and until the 20th century in most of the rest of the world, 80% of all textiles and fabrics used for clothing, tents, beds, sheets, linens, rugs, drapes, quilts, towels, diapers, etc., even our flag, Old Glory, were principally made from fibers of cannabis. For hundreds, if not thousands of years until 1830, Ireland made the first linens and Italy made the world's finest cloth from clothing with hemp. Although these facts have been almost forgotten, our forebears were well aware that the hemp is softer than cotton, warmer than cotton, more water absorbent than cotton, has 3 times the tensile strength of cotton, and is many times more durable than cotton. In fact, the patriotic, real-life 1776 mothers of our present day bluebloods, daughters of the American Revolution, the DAR of Boston and New England, organized spinning bees to clothe Washington's soldiers. The majority of the thread was spun from hemp fibers. Were it not for historically forgotten or censored and currently disparaged medical plant, the Continental Army would have frozen to death at Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, if it weren't for hemp. The common uses of hemp in the economy of the early republic was most important enough to occupy the time and thoughts of our first U.S. Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton, who wrote in Treasury Notice from the 1790s, flax and hemp. Manufacturers of these articles have so much affinity to each other, and that they are so often blended that they may with advantage be considered in conjunction, so they would have 10% of flaxseed in the sail cloth. The covering wagons went west to Kentucky, Indiana, Illinois, Oregon, and California, covered by sturdy hemp canvas tarpaulins, while ships sailed around the Horn to San Francisco on hemp sails and ropes. Homespun cloth was almost always spun by people all over the world, from fibers grown in the family hemp patch. In America, this tradition lasted from the Pilgrims 1620 until hemp's prohibition in 1930s. The age of density of hemp patches influences fiber quality. If the farmer wanted soft linen quality fibers, he would plant his cannabis closer together. As a rule, if you plant for medical or recreational use, you plant 1 seed per 5 square yards. When planted for seed, for oils, textiles, any of that, you want to $120 to 180 seeds to the square yard area, planted for rough cordage or coarse cloth. Finest linen or lace is ground up 400 plants in the same square yard and harvested between 80 and 100 days. By the late 1820s, New America's hand cotton gins, invented by Eli Whitney in 1793, were largely replaced by European-made industrial looms and cotton gins. Gin is short for engine. Because of Europe's primary equipment, machinery, technology, tool, and dye making, led over America to America. For the first time, light cotton clothing could be produced at less cost than hand retting or rotting and hand separating hemp fibers to be hand spun on spinning wheels and jennies. Wow. Okay, can't do that 5 times fast. However, because of its strength, its softness, warmth, and long-lasting qualities, hemp continued to be the second most natural fibers until the 1930s. After 1937, marijuana tax law knew DuPont plastic fibers. Okay, that's going to be our first introduction to DuPont. And it's still the same company today that was back then. Just keep that in mind as we read through. Under license since 1936 from the German company IG Farben, F-A-R-B-E-N, patent surrenders were part of Germany's World War I reparation payments to America. Replaced natural hemp fibers. Some 30% of IG Farben under Hitler was owned and financed by America's DuPont. DuPont also introduced nylon, invented in 1935 to market after they patched in 1938. Until 1883, from 75 to 90% of all paper in the world was made with cannabis hemp. Fibers including that for books, Bibles, maps, paper money, stocks and bonds, newspapers, etc. The Gutenberg Bible in the 15th century, Panschrill, and the Herb Antiquarian Rebellious. I suck at pronouncing words, I apologize. King James Bible in the 17th century, Thomas Paine's pamphlets, The Rights of Men, Common Sense, The Age of Reason, 18th century, and these are all quoted. The works of Fitzhugh Ludlow, Mark Twain, Victor Hugo, Alexander Dumas, Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland, 19th century, and just about everything else was printed on hemp paper. The first draft of the Declaration of Independence, June 28, 1776, was written on Dutch hemp paper, as was the second draft completed on January 2nd, 1776. This was the document actually agreed to on that day and announced and released on 4th of July, 1776. On July 19, 1776, Congress ordered the Declaration to be copied and engrossed on parchment, a prepared animal skin, and this was the document actually signed by the delegates on August 2nd, 1776. What we, the colonial Americans, and the rest of the world used to make all of our paper was the discarded sails and ropes sold by ship owners as scrap for recycling into paper. The rest of our paper came from worn out clothes, sheets, diapers, curtains, and rags, made primarily from hemp and sometimes flaxseed. And then they're sold to scrap dealers. Our ancestors were too thrifty to just throw anything away, so until the 1800s, many remaining scraps of clothes were mixed together and recycled into paper. Rag paper containing hemp fiber is the highest quality and longest lasting paper ever made. It can be torn when wet but returns to its full strength when dry. Barring extreme conditions, rag paper remains stable for centuries. It will almost never wear out. Many U.S. government papers were written by law on hempen rag paper until the 1920s. It is generally believed by scholars that the early Chinese knowledge of art of hemp paper making 1st century AD, 800 years before the Islam discovered how, and 1200 to 1400 years before Europe, was one of the two chief reasons that Oriental knowledge and science were vastly superior to that of the West. For over 1400 years, thus the art of long-lasting hemp paper making, allowing the Orientals accumulated knowledge to be passed on, built upon, investigated, refined, challenged, and changed for generations after generation. In other words, cumulative and comprehensive scholarships. The other reason that Oriental knowledge and science sustained priority to that of the West for 1400 years was that the Roman Catholic Church forbade reading and writing for 95% of European peoples. People, in addition, they burned, hunted down, or prohibited all foreign or domestic books, including their own Bible, for over 1,200 years under the penalty and often used punishment of death. Hence, many historians term this period the Dark Ages. Virtually every city and town, from time out of mind, in the world had an industry making hemp rope. Russia, however, was the world's largest producer and best quality manufacturer, supplying 80% of the Western world's hemp from 1640 to 1940. Thomas Paine outlined 4 essential natural resources for new nations in Common Sense, 1776, cordage, iron, and timber and tar. Chief among those were the hemp for cordage. He wrote, hemp flourishes even to rankness we do not want for cordage. Then he went on to list the other essentials necessary for the war with the British Navy: cannons, gunpowder, etc. From 70 to 90% of all rope, twine, and cordage was made from hemp until 1937. It was then replaced mostly by petrochemical fibers, owned principally by DuPont, under licensing from Germany's IG Verbatim Corporation patents, and by Manila Abaca hemp, with steel cables often intertwined for strength, brought in from our new far western Pacific Philippines possession, seized from Spain as reparations for the Spanish-American War of 1898. Hemp is the perfect archival medium. The paintings of Van Gogh, Gettysburg, Rembrandt, etc. were primarily painted on hemp canvases, as were practically all canvas paintings. A strong, lustrous fiber, hemp withstands heat, mildew, insects, and it's not only damaged by light. Oil paintings on hemp and or flaxseed have stayed in fine condition for centuries. For thousands of years, virtually all good paints and varnishes were made with hemp seed oil and or linseed. For instance, in 1935 alone, 116 million pounds, or 58,000 tons, of hemp seed were used in America just for paint and varnish. The hemp dyeing oil business went particularly to DuPont Petrochemicals, and that's a big thing. You're gonna find DuPont all the way through this. And you're going to start seeing that they lied. They lied. And they lied for people to make money. So we lost all of the benefits of cannabis because they wanted to get rich. And that's kind of how that worked. And DuPont is all the way through this. It is insane It's insane. Virtually every city and town from time out of I did that one. My bad. Congress and the Treasury Department were assured through secret testimony given by DuPont, 1935-37, directly to Herman Oliphant, Chief Counsel for the Treasury Department, the hemp seed could be replaced with synthetic petrochemicals that made by DuPont. Now, Oliphant was the sole person responsible for drafting the Marijuana Tax Act that was submitted to Congress, and we're going to read a lot more about that in chapter 4, but I don't have a date yet. So, until about 1800, hemp seed oil was the most consumed lighting oil in America and the world from then until the 1870s. It was the second most consumed lighting oil, exceeded by only whale oil. Hemp seed oil lit the lamps of the legendary Aladdin, Abraham the prophet, and the real-life Abraham Lincoln. It was the brightest lamp oil. Hemp seed oil for lamps was replaced by petroleum and kerosene after 1859. Pennsylvania oil discovery and John D. Rockefeller's 1870 National Petroleum Stewardship. The seed of cannabis is prized in other countries for its oil, and its neglect here illustrates the same wasteful use of our agricultural resources. In the early 1900s, Henry Ford and other futuristic organic engineering geniuses, recognized as their intellectual scientific heirs still do today, an important point: that up to 90% of all fossil fuels used in the world today, coal, oil, natural gas, etc., should long ago have been replaced with biomass such as corn stalks, cannabis, waste paper, and things of that sort. Biomass can be converted to methane, methanol, or gasoline at a fraction of the current cost of oil. Coal or nuclear energy, especially when environmental costs are factored in and it's mandated to be used, and it would end acid rain, end sulfur-based smog, and reverse the greenhouse effects on our planet. Right now. Like now. So yeah, I have read this book cover to cover 2 or 3 times now. And I'm convinced that if, let's say, let's just go all the way, let's go big or go home. Let's say the president found this. Or AOC and her Green New Deal found this. Do you think they'd implement? I hope so. All of this can be accomplished if hemp is grown for biomass and then converted through pyrolysis or charcoaling or biochemical composting into fuels to replace fossil fuel energy products. One product of pyrolysis, methanol, is used today by most race cars and was used in American farmers and auto drivers routinely, with petroleum and methanol options starting in the 20s. through the 1930s and even into the mid-40s, to run tens of thousands of auto, farm, military vehicles until the end of World War II. Methanol can be used and converted into high-octane, lead-free gasoline using a catalytic process developed by Georgia Tech University in conjunction with mobile oil from 1842 through the 1890s. Extremely strong marijuana, and then known as cannabis extractums, and hashish extracts, tinctures, elixirs were routinely the second and third most used medicines in America for humans from birth through childhood to old age, and in veterinary medicines until the 1920s and longer. As stated earlier, for at least 3,000 years prior to 1842, widely varying marijuana extracts, buds, leaves, roots, etc., were the most common used and widely accepted medicines in the world for the majority of mankind's illnesses. However, in Western Europe, the Roman Catholic Church forbade the use of cannabis or any medical treatment except for alcohol or bloodletting for 1,200 plus years. So yeah, kind of sounds like a conspiracy theory, doesn't it? The U.S. Pharmacopoeia indicated that cannabis should be used for treating such ailments as fatigue, fits of coughing, rheumatism, asthma, delirium, tremors, migraines, headaches, and the cramps with depression associated with menstruation. Professor William M. Bowden, professor of narcotic botany, California State University, Northridge. Queen Victoria used cannabis resins for her menstrual cramps and PMS, and her reign in 1837 to 1901. Now I remember what I was saying about my dad. Paralleled the enormous growth of the use of Indian cannabis medicine in the English-speaking world. In the 20th century, cannabis research has demonstrated therapeutic value and complete safety in treating many health problems, including asthma, glaucoma, nausea, tremors, epilepsy, infection, stress, migraines, anorexia, depression, rheumatism, arthritis, Alzheimer's disease, and herpes. Okay, I've never seen herpes before. Alright. Hemp seed was regularly used in porridge, soups, gruels by virtually all the people of the world, up until the century monks were required to eat hemp seed dishes 3 times a day to weave their clothes with, and print their Bibles on. Hemp seed can be pressed for its highly nutritious vegetable oil, which contains the highest among the essential fatty acids in the plant kingdom. These essential oils are responsible for our immune response and clear the arteries of cholesterol and plaque. The byproduct of pressing the oil from the seed is the highest quality protein seed cake. It can be sprouted, malted, or ground and baked into cakes, bread, and casseroles. Marijuana seed protein is one of the mankind's finest, most complete, and available to body vegetable proteins. Hemp seed is the most complete single food source for humans' nutrition. Hemp seed was, until 1937, prohibited with a prohibition law, the world's #1 bird seed for both wild and domestic birds. It was their favorite of any seafood on the planet. 4 million pounds of hemp seed for songbirds were sold at retail in the U.S. in 1937. Birds will pick the hemp seeds out, eat them first from the pile of mixed seed. Birds in the wild eat them first. Birds birds in the wild live longer and breed more with hemp seed in their diet, using the oil for their feathers and their overall health. Hemp seed produces no observable high for humans or birds. Only the most minute traces of THC are actually in the seed, or the hemp seed. It's also a favorite fish bait in Europe. Anglers buy pecks of hemp seed at bait stores and then throw handfuls into rivers and ponds. Fish come thrashing out. Okay. Fish come thrashing out for hemp seed and are caught by hook. No other bait is as effective, making hemp seed generally the most desirable and most nutritious food for humans, birds, and fish. Because 1 acre of hemp seed produces as much as cellulose fiber pulp as 4.1 acres of trees. Hemp is the perfect material to replace trees for pressed board, particle board, and for concrete construction molds. Practical, inexpensive, fire-resistant construction material with excellent thermal and sound insulating qualities. It is made by heating and compressing plant fibers to create strong construction paneling, replacing drywall and plywood. William B. Cond of Redbird Wood Lumber near Eugene, Oregon, in conjunction with Washington State University, 1991 and 1993, has demonstrated the superior strength, flexibility, and economy of hemp composite building materials compared to wood or fiber or even beams. Hemp has been used throughout the history for carpet backing. Hemp fiber has potential in the manufacturing of strong, rot-resistant carpeting, eliminating the poisonous fumes of burning synthetic materials in a house or a commercial fire, along with allergic reactions associated with the new synthetic carpeting. Plastic plumbing pipe or PVC pipes can be manufactured using renewable hemp cellulose as a chemical feedstocks, replacing non-renewable coal or petroleum-based chemical feedstocks. So, we can envision a house of, we can envision the house of the future, built, plumbed, painted, and furnished with the world's #1 renewable resource, hemp. The American Declaration of Independence recognizes inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Okay. Subsequent, I can't say that word, I'm sorry, court decisions have inferred the rights to privacy and choice from this, the U.S. Constitution, and its amendments. Many artists and writers have used cannabis for creative stimulation, from the writers of the world's religious masterpieces to our most irrelevant servants, including Lewis Carroll and his hookah-smoking caterpillar in Alice in Wonderland, plus Victor Hugo and Alexander Dumas, such jazz greats as Louis Armstrong, Cab Calloway, Duke Ellington, and Gene Krupa. And the pattern continues right up to the modern-day artists and musicians such as the Beatles, Rolling Stones, the Eagles, the Doobie Brothers, Bob Marley, Jefferson, Airplane, Willie Nelson, Buddy Rich, Country, and so on and so forth. They all smoke cannabis. But throughout history, various prohibitions and temperance groups have attempted to occasionally succeed in banning the preferred relaxational substances of others like alcohol, tobacco, or cannabis. Abraham Lincoln responded to this kind of repressive mentality in December of 1840 when he said, "Prohibition goes beyond the bounds of reason, in that it attempts to control man's appetite by legislation and makes crime out of things that are not crimes. A prohibition law strikes a blow at every principles upon which our government was founded. We believe that in competitive markets, with all facts, people will rush to buy long-lasting, biodegradable Pop-Tarts or Mary Jeans, etc., made from a plant without pesticides, herbicides. Some of the companies who have led the way with these products are Evolution, Hempstead, Mari Mills, Ohio Hempery, Two Star Dog, Headcase, and in Germany, Hasselhoff? Hansfulhaus. I'm really not sure. I apologize. I am not trying to butcher your name. I apologize. It is time we put the capitalism to the test and let the unrestricted market supply and demand, as well as green, ecological conscious, decide to future with this planet. A cotton shirt in 1776, sorry, my toe. A cotton shirt in 1776 cost 100 to 200, while a hemp shirt cost 50 cents to $1. By the 1930s, cooler, lighter cotton shirts were on par in price with the warmer, heavier hempen shirts provided by competitive choice. People were able to choose their garments based on their particular qualities that they wanted in the fabric. Today, we have no such choice. People were able to choose their garments. The role of hemp and other natural fibers should be determined by the market of supply and demand and personal tastes and values, not by undue influence and prohibition laws, federal subsidies, and huge tariffs that keep the natural fabrics from replacing synthetic ones. 70 years of government suppression of information has resulted in virtually no public knowledge of the incredible potential of hemp fiber and its uses. By using 100% hemp or mixing hemp with organic cotton, you would be able to pass on your shirts, pants, and other clothing to your grandchildren. Intelligent spending could essentially replace and the use of petrochemical synthetic fibers such as nylon polyester with a tougher, cheaper, cool, absorbent, breathing, biodegradable natural fibers. China and Italy and Eastern European countries such as Hungary, Romania, Czechoslovakia, Poland, and Russia currently make millions of dollars worth of sturdy hemp and hemp cotton textiles, and could be making billions of dollars worth annually. These countries build upon their traditional farming and weaving skills, while the U.S. tries to force extinction of a plant to prop up destructive synthetic technologies. Even cannabis, cotton blends, textiles were not cleared for direct sale in the U.S. until 1991. The Chinese, for instance, were forced by tacit agreement to send us inferior remnant cotton. As of 1990 edition of the Emperor Went Press, garments containing at least 55% cannabis hemp arrived from China and Hungary. In 1992, we went to press. Many different grades of 100% hemp fabric had arrived directly from China and Hungary. Now, in 2007, hemp and fabric is in booming demand all over the world, arriving from Russia, Poland, Italy, Germany, and on. Hemp was recognized as the hottest fabric of the 90s by Rolling Stones magazine, Newsweek, Paper, Detour, Time, New York, I can't, the New York Times, Los Angeles Times, they have all run stories on hemp. Yeah, they've run it over and over again. They don't want to listen. In conclusion, we reiterate our original promise with our challenge to the world, proving us wrong. If fossil fuels and their derivatives, as well as trees for paper construction, were banned in order to save the planet, reverse greenhouse effects, then there is only one known annually renewable natural resource that is capable of providing the overall majority of the world's paper and textiles, meeting all of the world's transportation, industrial, and home energy needs, while simultaneously reducing pollution, rebuilding the soil, and cleaning the atmosphere all at the same time. And that substance is the same one that did it all before: cannabis, hemp, marijuana. Okay. Almost done. Kind of. Let's smoke real quick. This is, I don't know, it's just, it makes no sense to me. But there's a lot of industries that wouldn't be as big as they are today. You know, like logging. You can replace 90% of logging with cannabis. And again, it's renewable. Every season you could have a brand new batch. You can add it to food, medicines, animals. I mean, it's so universal to help all of us and this planet. And that's not even talking about the side effects of actually smoking cannabis. I have seen people go from mad and fighting couples to smoking, giving it a minute or two, and then sitting down and discussing the situation. It kind of puts that I don't know, break there to where you can listen now. So there's a lot of things with cannabis, and cannabis is going to get in the middle of all of these industries. So all of these industries now wouldn't make any money, like DuPont. So, yes, the prohibition of cannabis was logging industry. Medicines, big pharma, they couldn't do anything with cannabis, so yeah, that went by the wayside. All of our petrols, all of our oils, all of our fats, you know, it's replaced all of these things. And it makes you wonder, okay, well, we eat like crap here in the Americas anyway, because they don't care how, they just put whatever they want to in our food, and we have to learn how to do it the right way. And that's the big thing. There has to be a good balance, personally. So, the Battle of Bulletin 404, or how the World War I cost us hemp and the forest. The setting: in 1917, the world was battling World War I. In this century, industrialists just beset with minimum wage and graduated income tax were sent into a tailspin. Progressive ideals were lost as United States took a place on the world stage in the struggle for commercial supremacy. It is against this backdrop that the first 20th century hemp drama was played. The Players. The story begins in 1916, soon after the release of USDA Bulletin 404. near San Diego, California. A 50-year-old German immigrant named George Schlichten had been working on a simple yet brilliant invention. Schlichten had spent 18 years and $400,000 on a Decorticator, a machine that could strip the fiber from nearly any plant, leaving pulp behind to build it. He had developed an encyclopedia of knowledge of fibers and paper making. His desire was to stop the felling of the forest for paper, which he believed to be a crime. His native Germany was well advanced in forestry, and Schlichten knew that destroying forests meant destroying needed watersheds. Henry Timpton, a wealthy industrialist and inventor of the roller bearing, got wind of Schlichten's invention and went to meet the inventor in February of 1917. Timpton saw the Decorticator as a revolutionary discovery that would improve conditions for mankind. Timpton offered Schlichten the chance to grow 100 acres of hemp on his ranch in the fertile farmlands of Imperial Valley, just east of San Diego, so Schlichten could test his invention. Shortly thereafter, Timpton met the newspaper giant E.W. Scripps and his longtime associate Milton McRae at the Miramad Scripps home in San Diego. Scripps, then 63, had accumulated the largest chain of newspapers in the country. Timpton hoped to interest Scripps in making newsprint from hemp. Turn of the century newspaper barons needed huge amounts of paper to deliver their swelling circulations. Nearly 30% of 4 million tons of paper manufactured in 1909 was newsprint. By 1914, the circulation of daily newspapers had increased by 17%, over 1909 figures to over 28 million copies by 1917. Price of newsprint was rapidly rising, and McRae, who had been investigating owning a paper mill since 1904, was concerned. Sowing the seeds. In May, after further meetings with Timpton, Scripps asked McRae to invent the possibility of using the Decorticator in manufacturing of newsprint. McRae quickly became excited about the plan. He called the Decorticator a great invention which would not only render great services to this country, but would be very profitable financially. It may revolutionize existing conditions, and on August 3rd, as harvest time neared, a meeting was arranged between Schlichten, McRae, and the newspaper manager, Ed Chase. Without Schlichten's knowledge, McRae had his secretary record the 3-hour meeting stenographically, and the results documented in only one known record of Schlichten's voluminous knowledge found to date, is reprinted fully in Appendix 1. So we do have appendix. There's a lot. Schlichten had thoroughly studied many kinds of plants for paper, among them corn, cotton, yucca, and Espana baccata. Hemp seemed to be his favorite. The hemp herd is a practical success and will make paper of higher grade and new stock, he stated. His hemp paper was even better than that produced for the USDA Bulletin 404, he claimed, because the Decorticator eliminated the writing process, leaving behind the short fibers and natural glue that held the paper together. At 1917 levels of hemp production, Schlichten anticipated making 50,000 tons of paper yearly at a retail price of $25 a ton. This was less than 50% of the price of newsprint at that time, and every acre of hemp turned to paper. Schlichten added would preserve 5 acres of forest. So, okay, makes sense now. McRae was very impressed by Schlichten, the man who dined with presidents and captains of the industry, wrote to Timken, I was to say without evocation, that Mr. Schlichten impressed me as a man in great intellectually and ability, and so far as I can see, he has created and constructed a wonderful machine. He assigned Chase to spend as much time as he could with Schlichten and prepare a report. By August, after only 3 months of growth, Timken's hemp crop had grown to its full height of 14 feet. Wow. And he was highly optimistic about the prospects. He hoped to travel to California to watch the crop being decorticated, seeing himself as a benefactor to mankind who would enable people to work shorter hours and have more times for spiritual development. Scripps, on the other hand, was not in an optimistic frame of mind. He had lost faith in the government that he had believed he was leading the country to financial ruin because of the war, and that would take 40% of his profits in income tax. In an August 14th letter to his sister, Ellen said, when Mr. McRae was talking to me about the increase in the price of white paper that was pending, I told him I was just fool enough not to be worried about a thing of that kind. The price of paper was expected to rise 50%, costing Scripps his entire year's profit of $1,125,000 rather than development and new technology. He took the easy way out, the penny press. Ward simply pinned to rise the price of his papers from 1 cent to 2 cents. On August 28th, Chase sent his full report to Scripps and McRae. The younger man also was taken with the process. I've seen a wonderful yet simple invention. I believe it will revolutionize many of the processes of feeding, clothing, and supplying other wants of mankind. Chase witnessed the Decorticator produce 7 tons of hemp herds in 2 days at full production. Schlichten anticipated each machine would produce 5 tons per day. Chase figured hemp would easily supply Scripps' West Coast newspaper with leftover pulp for a side business. He estimated the newsprint would cost about $25 or $25 to $35 a ton, and proposed asking the East Coast paper mill to experiment for them. McRae, however, seemed to have gotten the message that his boss was no longer very interested in making paper from hemp. He responded to Chase's report cautiously. Much will be determined as the practicality by the cost of transportation, manufacturing, etc., which we cannot assert without due investigation. Perhaps when his ideals met with the hard work of developing them, the semi-retired McRae backed off. By September, Timken's crop was producing 1 ton of fiber and 4 tons of hurd per acre, and he was trying to interest Scripps into opening a paper mill in San Diego. McRae and Chase traveled to Cleveland and spent 2 hours convincing Timken that while hemp curds were usable for other types of paper, they could be made into newsprint extremely cheap. Perhaps the Eastern mill at which they experimented wasn't encouraging. After all, it was set up to make wood pulp paper. By this time, Timken, too, was hurt by the wartime economy. He expected to pay 54% income tax and was trying to borrow $2 million with a 10-cent interest to retool for war machines. The man who a few weeks earlier could not wait to get to California no longer expected to go west at all. But in winter, he told McRae, "I think I will be too damn busy in this section of the country looking after business." The Decorticator resurfaced again in 1930 when it was touted as a machine that would make hemp $1 billion crop. And articles in Mechanical Engineering and Popular Mechanics until the 1993 edition of the Emperor, the Decorticator was believed to be a new discovery at that time. Once again, I'm not sure. The blundering hemp industry was halted, this time by the Marijuana Tax Act of 1937. Whew. In early 1989, Jack Hare and Maria Farrow put this question to Stephen Rawlings, the highest ranking officer in the U.S. Department of Agriculture, who was in charge of reversing the greenhouse effects at the USDA World Research Facility in Beltsville, Maryland. First, we introduced ourselves and told him what we were writing. Told him we were writing for green political party newspapers. Then we asked Rawlings if you could have any choice, what would be the ideal way to reverse the greenhouse effect? He said, stop cutting down trees and stop using fossil fuels. Well then, why don't we? There's no viable substitute for wood, for paper, or for fossil fuels. Why don't you use an annual plant that biomass to make fuel? Well, that would be ideal, he agreed. Unfortunately, there is nothing you can use that could produce enough materials. Well, what would you say if there was such a plant that could substitute for all the wood pulp paper, all the fossil fuels, that would make our fibers, most of our fibers naturally, make everything from dynamite to plastic, grows in all 50 states, and that 1 acre of it could replace 4.1 acres of trees, and that if you used about 6% of the U.S. land to raise it as its energy crop, even on our marginal lands, this plant would produce over 75 quadrillion billion BTUs needed to run America every year. Would that help to save the planet? That would be ideal. But there is no such plant. We think there is. Yeah? What is it? Hemp. Hemp. He mused for a moment. I would have never thought of it. You know, I think you're right. Hemp could be the plant that could do it. Wow, that was a great idea. We were excited. As we outlined this information and delined the potentials of HIT and for paper, fiber, fuel, plants, and how it could be applied to balance the world's ecosystems and restore atmosphere and oxygen balance with almost no disruption of the standards of living which most Americans have become accustomed to. In essence, Rawlings agreed that our information was probably correct and could very well work. He said, "It's a wonderful idea and I think it might work, but of course, you can't use it." "You're kidding," we responded. "Why not?" "Well, Mr. Hurd, did you know that hemp is also marijuana?" "Yeah, of course. I know. I've been writing about it for 40 hours a week for the past 17 years. "Well, you know marijuana is illegal, don't you?" "You can't use it. Not even to save the world?" No, it's illegal. He sternly informed me. You cannot use something illegal. You can't use it, period. Don't get me wrong, it's a great idea, he went on, but they'll never let you do it. Why don't you go ahead and tell the Secretary of Agriculture that a crazy man from California gave you documentation that showed hemp might be able to save the planet, and that your first reaction is, he might be right, and well, it needs some serious study. Well, I don't think I'd be here very long after that. After all, I am an officer of the government. Well, why not call up the information on your computer and your own USDA library? That's where we got all the information in this first place. He said, I can't sign out the information. Well, why not? We did. Mr. Herr, you're a citizen. You can sign out for anything you want, but I'm an officer of the Department of Agriculture. Someone's going to want to know why I want all of this information, and then I'm out. Finally, we agreed to send him all the information we got from the USDA library if he could just take a look at it. He said he would, but when we called back a month later, he said he still had not opened the box that we sent him, and that he would be sending it back unopened. It's all in the crease and I get lost. It sent us back unopened because he didn't want to be responsible for the information. Now that the Bush administration was replacing him with his own man, we asked him if we could pass on the information to his successor, and he replied, absolutely not. In the end, he said, if you really want to save the planet with hemp, then you, hemp activists, would find a way to grow it without narcotic tops, and then you could use it. This is the kind of frightened and frightening irresponsibility that we're against in our government. So, and that's really sad. That is really sad if they did that. You know, they knew, oh yeah, it's a ideal, but no. And that all has to do with your logging industry, your pharma, it's all in DuPont, oh my goodness. You're gonna hear a lot about DuPont. And it's infuriating at times, you know. Oh yeah, it would be great. Nope, I don't want it. You know, it's just, the stigma has got to change. It's time for the stigma to change around cannabis. It's really not that bad. It's not that scary. I can still mostly read. I have a little trouble sometimes. So, and what it is because I don't have any teeth. I lost my teeth to cancer treatment. And so I don't have any teeth, so when I'm trying to talk, I create a bunch of saliva, and it's so gross. I hate it. But I create a lot of saliva, so I have to kind of open my mouth and close my mouth calmly. And I have to remember to speak clearly, because it's harder when you don't have any teeth. Good stuff. So that is it for today. Mad love. I will see you guys back in a day or two for chapter 3. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach just a slideshow at the end with all the pictures so you can see what the pictures look like. I don't want to publish too much of the book itself because that belongs to the Herrer family. So, yeah. Have a beautiful day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye. Are you going to get up and say hi? You going to do anything?